Well, this is Jana Rudler at the Bundy Museum of History and Art. Today in our WBDY studio, we'll be speaking with Aldo Borromei, and he's a local fella from the north side of Endicott and going to be exhibiting at the Bundy Museum of History and Art this coming First Friday on March 6th. Welcome.
I'm glad to be here.
It's good to have you here. So tell us a little bit about your background, pre-art, and some of what formed your personality for art.
That's a good question.
Covers a lot of bases.
When I was very young, I was just a kid. There was a trumpet player in my area. He was my neighbor down the street. His name was Ed Zandy, and he was with the big bands. And the first time I heard him play, I thought, I want to do that. It was really a big moment in my life. I might have been 10 years old, maybe a little less. So I pursued that with a passion until I achieved quite a high level of play. And I studied in New York. I went on the road with the tail end of big bands. And then I started playing jazz when I came back to town here. And that really changed. It changed my whole life, really, the creativity of it. There's something about playing jazz that a lot of people don't realize what it really is, but that's what it is. It's spontaneous creativity, just right off the top of your head, although that's not as easy as it seems. Mm-hmm. So I worked around the Binghamton here with a lot of small groups. They no longer exist as they did then. But even when I was studying as a classical trumpet player, I worked here with the symphony and with the opera at that time. So many people may know Peyton Hibbett and Carmen Savoca.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a lot of fun because my father was an opera fan. So he came to see me play in the pit. And I played all around New York. And when I was reading the book On the Road, I was on the road.
Wow.
So, like I say, it was the tail end of big bands. And then I started playing in small groups. My return here was just when SUNY Binghamton, now Binghamton University, had a lab band with Al Hom and several of the young beboppers, I call them, because that's what we were playing, bebop at that time, in town. And I was part of that. And most of the musical things that happened here.
Your music, this makes me think of something, because you've described your art as improvisational art.
That's why.
And does that stem from improvisational music? I mean, because jazz is largely, at times, improv, correct?
Well, jazz players usually play like when they all go through this, play all together. They call that song, whatever it is, the head. Huh. Okay, so after that, each one plays a solo, and those solos are improvised. They just don't play the same song over and over again. You develop in your course. Each course is one time through, and sometimes in small groups, the instrumentalist will play 2 or 3 courses, and then the next guy plays, and then sometimes the drummer plays, and there are little rules that go with it. Mm-hmm. But what it really is improvising upon the chordal changes. There are guides. So it's not just free form, any old thing. There are guides. And the rules include, well, first of all, knowing what key you're in.
Right.
and also there are several things to be recognized. There's the intonality of the piece that you're playing. There's the development. I mean, you can't start at your full speed, so to speak, and so you have to develop it. And it's all improvisational, and it should have some continuity. And we're working toward building to a point. In art, in all art, it's this. You start small and you gradually crescendo to something. That crescendo could be visual as well. Mm-hmm. And then it's resolution. It's tension resolution. So that's one of the things about art that I missed after I stopped playing. Right. Also, people around this town know me as a hairstylist.
I know. I think you have cut my mother's hair before.
Not your mother, your father, maybe.
So you didn't do styling?
No, I started in town here as a men's hairstylist, and I called myself that because I fashioned what I did after Jay Sebring, who's his name is known because of his involvement with the Tate LaBianca murders. But he was a young guy, and he worked by appointment, which I did. And at that time, it wasn't fashionable at all. and I worked with razor cutting and European shear and comb. So it was really very creative because there are also rules to cutting hair. So I freed a lot of young men of the greasy kid stuff. So I kind of made a mark in hair cutting hair.
Right.
And my life kept changing for a variety of reasons. I finally went back to school. But before I went back to school, I got interested in the human potential movement. And I lived in New York, and I did some work that it's not known around here, but it's called body work. It's an intense form of emotional release. And I went to school for that in California for about 2 years, 2.5 years. And then I had a studio in New York. And I worked with psychologists who sent me their people to work into getting in their emotions. That was very creative too, but in a totally different way. It's hard to explain because it's an experiential thing. So when I went back to school, I went to SUNY. I got a master's there in social science, and
through the School of Education and Human Development.
That's right.
Yeah, and you focused a little on experiential learning. How does that tie into how your art has evolved?
That's a good question. I was just about ready to get to that. Okay, so experiential learning is usually, it's called the School of Hard Knocks.
Oh, is that what that is?
Learning by doing.
Yeah.
But it's been looked at very seriously by scientists. You need to experience something to learn it.
Sure.
That's the whole idea behind experiential learning. It's right in the word, experiential.
Right.
But basically, all education is experiential, and that's the clue to how I get into how I feel about my art, because basically I feel that any expression is also an experience, and vice versa. This is just a notion. I have no way of proving this. Psychologists and philosophers have talked about it for years. But when somebody expresses something as an organism, you can express tears. And when they're expressed, they're tears. It's sadness. But there are also mild types of sadness that are just, like the blues in music. Let's take the feeling of anger. It goes everywhere from mild annoyance to murderous rage.
Right.
Okay? So there are degrees of it. And those degrees are experienced in a particular way. And the organism, all organisms, express that through anger. Anger is an expression. It's also an experience. So to get it down to the most minimal and almost not noticeable degree of it is a little feeling that we can get from a word, a semantic reaction to a word. And because I was interested in semantics, that's how I got to be able to talk about or put together some rationale for the way that I work.
Okay.
So one of the things that I try to promote, and if someone reads anything on my site, which, by the way, I have an art gallery that's online that you can buy art through it, and it's interactive. You can move the art all around different rooms that they suggest. Wow. Anyway, there's a certain amount of expression and experience when you look at a work of art. Now, everybody knows abstract expressionism, for example. Now, that's a word that sounds good, but it's a big grab bag. Everybody's an abstract expressionist to some degree, unless they're painting a seashore and a moon, and then there's not much abstracting to be done. You see what it is. It has a title. Anybody can name it. Moon over the water.
Sure. So realism would be more like, painting exactly what you see, and abstract would be more like painting what you feel, perhaps?
Okay, that's a good concept, but there's a capacity to abstract. The word abstract is an interesting word to begin with because there's a verb to abstract. And when you are doing that, you're abstracting. ING is the gerund to that verb. Okay, so people are doing it all the time, but you don't know it because it's one of these micro behaviors that we really don't pay too much attention to. I'll give you an example.
Okay.
Many people have seen the optical illusion of two faces or one vase.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
So if someone hasn't done that, They don't know that there's a certain feeling that goes with the vase. And there's a certain feeling that goes with the two vases.
Sure.
Each one of those is a different abstraction, a putting together of information. And each one of those in psychology is called a gestalt. So one is the background and one becomes the foreground. But when we look at abstract art, sometimes we don't know what to do with it. You look at it and you either go blank or you get excited, or you say, well, that looks like this or that looks like that. But this capacity to hover over a painting or anything and imagine what it reminds you of, or you try to put together, make meaning out of it, this abstracting capacity is how we make meaning.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so this is a definition. However, meaning making, you can't find it in a dictionary.
Right.
In dictionary, you find the definition of a word, but meanings are found in people. We make meanings of things as we see them, and they change. This is happening on such a level that it's just natural to human existence. So when I was in the human potential movement, I started to learn more on what it means to be human. One doesn't need to be sick to get better. One doesn't need to be out of sorts or not functioning to improve their life as a human being, to be more kind, to be more whatever. Okay, so this emotional thing is what I'm concerned with. But it's not mine. It's not just my emotion. I'm concerned about the observer. It's like really, I want the observer to get the feeling of improvising or abstracting from my work what they can for themselves.
So it sounds like it's almost more important to you for somebody to derive their own meaning from your work rather than you imposing a meaning on that work that they should try to discern. You may have your own reason and motivation behind painting a certain work, but that's not necessarily what you want people to see in it.
That's exactly right, and I'm glad you got that, because that's like sometimes people want to know, what does the artist think? What does he really mean?
Right.
Well, I'm not really sure what I mean, because as I keep looking at my own work, I'm abstracting it in a different way. I'm a different person day to day. And what the art should do is be there for you to find out more about yourself. It's a mirror of some sort, but it's personal. So art can be personalized. And that's how you personalize. That's how you get to like it. And even those people say, I don't know if it's art, but I know what I like. Well, there's a seed of truth to that. They know what they like. It could be garbage. It could be a poster. It could, see what I'm driving at?
Sure.
However, if you start to get involved with the painting or a piece of sculpture or anything that will bear your repeated viewing of it, you're making meaning out of it, you're personalizing it. It could be decorative. Some artists think that, you say decorative art is an oxymoron. If it's decorative, it can't be art. Well, I don't believe that.
Right.
I believe that I needed the expression. I did need an expression, but was it abstract? In the beginning, it's non-objective. It is subjective. It's me putting my whatever I'm doing, I'm learning, I'm being guided in some way because you get in the groove, or it's a trance. Sports people get into their zone.
Yeah.
Okay, so
So
I
art
can't
is
call it intellectual because it's not.
right. It's more emotional, really, than intellectual.
Yeah, emotional covers it. One of the first people to do this was a crossover. He crossed over from being a lawyer into an artist. His name was Wassily Kandinsky. Now, a lot of people know Kandinsky's like the granddaddy, but the term abstract expressionism didn't even come into being until the 50s, and he was 20 years before that. But he heard a musician that he became a friend with, Schoenberg was the guy's name, the musician's name, and he had come up with a way of putting notes together. It was called a 12-tone row. We know of scales, but he had a different way. And Kandinsky got the idea to paint and to have certain lines, dots, have meaning, and the colors went with those. So he actually invented a whole new language in art that he said was the inner need, a spiritual inner need to express.
Oh.
Okay, so